that I've got my layer, remember with the hand, I basically do a square first, right? And if I'm looking at my hand straight on like this, I'm going to get down my size a little bit there. I can divide it in half again, and then half again. Here's where I have knuckles, and they kind of go up like that, and they all center right there, right? So I'm looking at the bones in my hand and all that kind of stuff. The bones kind of come down and meet in one point right there, and that's kind of a square. So you'll see the length of my hand is like that, right? And if you measure the length of your hand from here to here, that's exactly the same length as your fingers. So right up here, and I'm going to do that all from this like rotation point there. I can kind of go up like this. I know that my fingers are going to reach up to about there. Right? My thumb, like we talked about before, is out a little bit like that. And then my thumb can kind of come up like that. If I go to that same circle like this, the thumb comes out here and usually hits about mid-knuckle right there. But don't worry so much about that. Right? So then I basically just can try and build a little bit of volume on these fingers. And you can see I'm working throughout my entire hand the whole time, right? I'm not spending too much time on any one part. I can round that off. I start off with that square, but then it's basically just a process of building the volume, taking a look at my own hand to make sure that I'm pretty good. My middle finger I know is the longest finger. That's going to extend out there a little bit. It's not an exact science right now. It's basically you're just kind of trying to feel it out and figure out where stuff is. Figure out where those joints are in your hand. That's usually how I do it, right? You cut it into thirds like that, right? And kind of figure out where those hands are. And once you kind of got that all mapped out and you're like, yeah, that don't look too bad, like that, then I know my wrist kind of comes down here and down like that. Then I can build a little bit of detail in there. And that's kind of what today is going to be about, is building some of that detail. Once you've got that rough, remember I did it last time where I was kind of like building that volume, trying to get it to look about the right size. I know if I'm looking at my own knuckles, this is going to be kind of the wide spot here because I got like a big chunky knuckle in the middle. Right, and it kind of comes out here. I know I've got my fingernail kind of goes on the top right there. Same thing with this. I'm going to build those kind of fingernails, and you can kind of do it however you want. I like to move throughout the entire hand the whole time, so I'm not kind of staying on one spot too long. And the nice thing about that is that if I move kind of throughout my hand the whole time, and I generally have a better idea about the whole composition instead of concentrating on one area and then finding out that, oh man, I wasted all that time on that one area, but the whole thing doesn't look good. So that's why I like digital stuff is pretty sweet, because I can always go out here and kind of see, oh, okay, that's looking pretty good. This finger, I might want to go in and move that finger over slightly like that, right? And I can even go back into here and grab my eraser and be like, okay, I'm going to change that one a little bit, just because I'm not real sure about that one. And I'm going to move that one over slightly like that. So I can kind of change it midway through like that. I can also bring this out, and then I can go in again. And then, once I kind of get that basic form built, I can go in there and be like, okay, cool. I'm going to add some detail. This is going to be the wide part. Those knuckles, if I'm looking at my knuckle, I got kind of like a dent in here. There's a weird kind of dent in the middle of my knuckle there. And then This kind of goes around like that. I got weird, like, knuckly, weird, wrinkly knuckles. And I probably have more wrinkly knuckles than you guys do because I got old man hands, right? And I can always kind of build a little bit more volume. My hands are a little bit fatter than that. So I'm just going to build that volume out there again. Do this. And again, it's kind of like a process of exploring and figuring out just exactly how I want to draw all this stuff. And then my palm kind of extends. There's a little bit, I can even kind of extend this over like this and be like, okay, I need to have this. It's kind of like webbing even, you know what I mean? Like you got webbed hands a little bit. So I'm going to shade that in a little bit because that's kind of behind, right? And I've got my hands here. I've got some, like a knuckle here. I've got bones that kind of lay under here, so I'm going to see a little bit of hint of what those bones are like underneath. And again, I'm just kind of drawing them in roughly. And then I got, again, some more wrinkles here on my knuckles. I can even kind of draw those knuckles in if I want like that. I can always erase them later. And then this kind of comes down. I got a couple little wrinkly things there. I got a little wrinkle that kind of comes over there. And a little like that. And now I've got kind of the knuckle on my thumb. This is more a softer kind of thing going here. And this kind of comes up a little bit more. I want a little bit more volume in there. A little bit more volume in there. Kind of comes over, and then I can build my thumbnail kind of like that. And I got some weird wrinkly stuff going on there. There, and I can even grab some of that white and bring that in if I make a mistake, and then grab some of that black. You know, you guys are going to be working with a pencil and eraser, but I have some digital tools here that I can kind of work with. So once I get that basic shape in like that, again, I can go back out. I always like to see it from kind of a distance like that, and I can be like, yeah, that's looking all right. That's looking all right. This finger's kind of wonking out that way a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that in just slightly. I don't like exactly the way that looks, but I'm going to kind of bring it in a little bit there. Bring that fingernail in a little bit so it doesn't look like it's kind of wonking out to the side, right? And then I can grab some of that white, some of there, and then once I kind of get that basic outline, I can always go in and get a little bit bigger of a brush, opacity down a little bit, and now I'm kind of looking at the light. It looks like this finger kind of casts a shadow. Oops, I got the wrong color there. Casts a shadow right there, so I'm looking at kind of shading it in, and then I just kind of lightly shade it all in here, and this gives me a little bit of an idea of how I can try and make it look a little bit more rounded, right? So it's got a little bit of a shadow here, and then this is kind of shaded all through in here. I can do a little bit of shade right there. So you can see in the course of maybe, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, something like that, maybe a little bit longer depending on how much time you spend on it, you can get a pretty good rough idea of what that hand is going to look like, right? So I did a little bit of shading, whoops, in there, and now what I can do is I can go back in. If I like the size of that and I like the look of that, I can go in and add really fine looking detail. So I can go up here and be like, okay, I know this nail is kind of rounded off here, kind of comes down like that. If I like the placement of it, I can see a little bit of my finger there, and again I'm going to bring some of that down. I'm going to think about, okay, there's the smallest digit right there, and then it comes down. I'm still going to have that wideness right there, but you can see I'm starting to add some of that really nice detail, starting to widen this out a little bit. I can even add maybe a little touch of the wrinkle there. I've got some wrinkles that kind of come down into here, and I'm still working fairly quickly at this point, right? I'm not committing to like a final line at this point, but I'm starting to kind of really think about some of those nice detail lines. But I haven't added any of these nice detail lines until now, just because I wanted to make sure that it was good and it looks good before I start to spend a lot of time. Because this is where most of your time is going to be spent, is doing all this detail work. But the most important work you do, in my opinion, is that beginning work where you do the rough, where you get everything kind of mapped in. This right here tends to be just the detail, right? Where you're kind of trying to make it look good once you've got the form intact, right? So that first run of all that stuff was to get the form in, and now I'm working on detail. That's why form is very, very important in drawing, is to be able to make sure to get your proportions correct, so that when you do come back in here and add the detail, you're not like wasting your time, and you're not doing you've got your proportions correct before you start to add all of this junk in here, right? And you can see I've got kind of a narrow brush, so I'm doing some detail work, right? I'm making sure that I kind of add some of that detail, but you can also see that I'm still working very quickly. I'm still moving about the drawing quite a bit. I'm not committing to one area before I move on to the next, right? So that's kind of one of the most important things, I think, when it comes to drawing and accuracy and all that kind of stuff, is you want to be able to kind of move freely about your whole composition and make sure that you're working all of it. Because again, if you make a mistake or your proportions are kind of incorrect, it's better to catch it early rather than spend, a good half an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours on something, and then find out you're like, oh man, the proportions are kind of wonky. I really wish I would have spent my time up front so that I won't have to kind of start over from scratch. So if you need to start over from scratch, it's better to be able to catch it in that first 2 to 5 minutes, right? Where you do your rough. And that's generally what I try and do. I try and do like a 2-minute drawing, right? The first thing is I try to do a 30-second drawing where it's just a sketch. Then I try and do a 2-minute drawing. That's what I've done so far. And then I kind of think about, I'm going to do a 5 to 10-minute drawing. And that's what I'm working on right now, where I'm really putting in some specifics. I'm being real specific about my lines here. Still not like 100% specific, because I can still kind of go back in and make changes at this point, but I don't want to make any like real major changes at this point. I want to have this stuff pretty well blocked in at this point so that I'm not guessing exactly what my form is going to be. So I've got a little thing coming down here, and I know I got some wonky veins. I got one vein here. You guys probably don't have as many veins in your hands as I do in mine, and I've kind of got my shirt kind of starts right there, right? So I'd say this is a pretty good, 2 to 5 minute drawing, something like that. Looks like this is all pretty proportionate. Kind of got this. I got some detail here and some detail there. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, I like that. If you want a different composition, you can move out. I'm going to go ba 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 ba. I'm going to go out like this. I'm going to get a separate layer on here. So if I want a different composition, I can basically take those same principles, right? I can be, okay, I want a hand that's going to be a little bit at an angle. So it's going to kind of come up like this. There, that's the palm of my hand, right? Up here, I did a square, right? Same thing here, I'm doing a square, except it's kind of in perspective like that, right? I can find the middle of that square, there's the halfway point, boom, boom. So I've got a knuckle here, a knuckle there, a knuckle there, and a knuckle there, right? So I've got this finger kind of coming up like this. You know, I can kind of map it in. This one maybe I have coming up like that. This one, maybe I'm going to have this one kind of coming down like that. And then I've got this one coming down like that. And I'm kind of drawing a little bit three-dimensional. This comes out here, and I've got my thumb maybe out like that. Okay, so this would be my, my 30-second, my 10 to 30-second drawing where I make sure that my proportions are correct. This is maybe going to come out here, and I've got my wrist kind of coming down like that, right? It's looking all right. It's looking pretty good. So I still have my knuckles right here. I know that my finger kind of comes up here, and then I can kind of build my knuckles just like I did before, right? Where I'm kind of thinking about all the different parts of my fingers. I'm doing the same thing here. Comes out here, there's a knuckle, there's my finger there. This kind of comes out. This is a little bit softer here. I've got my fingernail. This comes up, I've got a knuckle there, knuckle there. That finger is there, knuckle. And then I might only see a little bit of that finger in the back there, right? So now I've got to kind of try and make sure that this is all working for me. Again, I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to go out a little bit and be like, oh yeah, that looks pretty good. This looks like it might be getting away from me a little bit here. Maybe I'm going to bring this down kind of like that. I don't mind that so much. That looks pretty good. Right, and having that long view and being able to see it from a distance helps me sometimes to kind of figure out what I'm doing wrong. This looks like it might kind of come out a little bit like that. Kind of like that. That's looking pretty good. And then I can go back in and I can do a little bit more detail. And again, I'm kind of looking at my finger and trying to figure out some of that detail. The wrinkles kind of come over the top there, down to there. This kind of comes, I might want to shorten this up just a little bit, and then it looks a little bit like that. I've got my fingernail kind of coming over like that. Same thing here. Looks like it got a little bit narrow on me, so I can bring this out like that. Come out like that. Got a little bit long on me here, so maybe my finger doesn't quite go out that much. Kind of like that. And then this thumb is giving me a little bit of problem there, but I can kind of try and fix that. This one's a little bit rougher than the first one, but I kind of like how it's turning out, right? That's looking pretty good. That's looking pretty good. This digit, this, and again, this one got away from me a little bit. It got a little bit long. I might kind of shorten that one up. Grab some of that white. Make sure it doesn't get too long right there. And then grab some of that dark, and that's going to come across. I'm going to see a little bit of that. Oops. See a little bit of that finger back there as it comes like that, and a little bit of that finger right there. And then I can do the same thing there where I get a little bit bigger of a brush, and then I can go in and I can try and shade some of that just to make it look a little bit, to give me that nice kind of sense of 3 dimensions. It's kind of throwing a shadow in there, and again, I'm just kind of blocking it in really, really quickly at this point, just to kind of give me some indication of where that light is, where it kind of plays off of the hand right there, and then I can always kind of try and add more detail later. Go into my drawing program, and here I've started a couple hands. You can see I've done the outline of my hands. And I've started to kind of do shading, right? So I'm going to do one more. I'm going to start from scratch one more time, right? On this one, I'm going to do a little bit of a challenging one. I'm going to do a fist, right? So remember with the fist, we kind of talked about that before. I'm going to start off with the same thing, that's square, right? And then get a smaller brush size. I'm going to go in a little bit closer here. Whoa. Okay, with a fist like this, if I start off with that same square, I need to kind of build in that thumb, right? And my thumb kind of comes up like that. And then the meaty part of my hand kind of goes like that. I've got my knuckle here. If I can even kind of divide that into quarters again, I've got a knuckle, a knuckle, a knuckle, a knuckle. And you can see I'm drawing a little bit three-dimensional. I've got this knuckle kind of comes forward like this, tucks in there. I've got another finger that comes in here, tucks in there. I've got another finger that comes like this, tucks in there, and then my pinky is the last one, a tiny little pinky little thing right here, and that tucks into there. Right? And I've got the other side of my hand there. Again, I got this. I got my knuckle kind of right there. Boom, boom, boom. And I can kind of start to build a little bit of detail in there. I've got my fingernail kind of comes up like that. Pew! And you can make sound effects when you draw. That's oftentimes the best way to draw. Pew, pew. Like that. So I've got this. That's going to kind of come down like that. Right? And I can start to kind of build a little bit of detail in there now. This comes up there. I know that the top of my finger is there. So then there's the underside of that finger. There's my knuckle at the top there. Might come down a little bit on that. Knuckle. And you can see I'm kind of building in a little bit of form, and then I'm going to try and do a little bit of shading to kind of remind myself that this is all kind of tucked under there. This is all shaded in here. Right? And again, I'm going to try and go back out, and just to kind of check a little bit to make sure I'm doing things all right, I like to go out a little bit, and then I can see things when I'm at a distance that I can't necessarily see when I'm close up, right? I can see some of this is wrong. I can see that my knuckle kind of needs to come down there a little bit, right? I can grab a little of this white and erase some of this stuff because I don't really want to see some of that. I'm going to erase some of this at the top. I think that got a little bit too big for me. I'm going to grab some of that. This is going to come in more like that. And this, from my knuckle here, this kind of comes in a little bit more like this at an angle. Builds into there, and then my wrist kind of comes off of there and there. Kind of like that. And then I got this weird like little tendon thing, and I've got a couple lines there. I've got this, and I've got that, right? So again, this is just kind of a quick sketch. It's not the best right now. Knuckles are, or fists are really, really difficult because you've got a lot of detail in a really small amount of space there. Like that. Do that. We'll do opacity a little bit up like that just so we can get a little bit of... What am I doing wrong here? Oh, the size. Like that. Okay. And then, like all of these, right, I can go back into this one if I want. I like to kind of work all the way around the figure, right? Try and kind of don't concentrate in one area too long like we had talked about before. So I'm going to go into this one, do a little bit more work on this one maybe, because I always want to figure out some of this stuff. I can always kind of build some detail. I've got weird little like lines and stuff in here. I got a vein kind of coming down like that. weird little knuckle line coming down like this, kind of like that, right? And I like to kind of go and work on all of it kind of all at the same time. So you can kind of come up into here, and I know I'm kind of mixing up my layers in here and that kind of stuff, but I'm going to come in here. I'm going to define some of this line a little bit. This one's looking a little bit more like boxy. It's kind of almost a different style, but I kind of like it. It looks good. And I can go in here and I can shade some of that down into there. I can kind of work on this a little bit, try and refine that thumbnail a little bit. Some of these lines right here. There's a line that kind of comes across there. There's like a little meaty bit right there. And then I can kind of just refine and refine and refine. Kind of like that, right? So I got three hands. I've got kind of a top-down view. I got like a weird little side view, and I got a fist. And these are all built hopefully fairly quickly. I'm trying to keep them all within, 5 to 10 minutes. And if you like the way they're turning out right now, like if I really liked all of these or one of these, I could go in then and I could try and do a little bit more shading. Like I could really come in here and kind of do like another layer of shading in all of these. I'm going to get my brush a little bit larger. So I could come in here and I could do like another layer of shading here, where I could really start to try and make this look a little bit more three-dimensional like that. You know what I mean? Same thing here. I know, okay, I'm going to do a little bit lighter shading there. There's a little bit there. Probably got a little shading down there. Same thing with this guy. I'm going to come in here with another layer of shading there and there. And you can use the side of your pencil, or you can, anything you can use, anything at your disposal you can kind of use to do that. And you can even kind of shade the whole thing. I don't want to do it quite that color. I'm going to go down with my opacity even more, and I can do a real kind of light shading to shade all of it if I want, right? So that it all looks a little bit shaded like that. So I've got no white whatsoever, and that's kind of nice because then it separates it from the background. It separates it from my paper a little bit. And the nice thing about doing digital is that I can do this all really, really quickly. Right, I can get a bigger size brush. I can always kind of go in and try and darken some areas up and lighten some other areas up like that. So hopefully by the end of the day today, you have something that looks a little something like that, where I can tell it's a hand and can tell you did some shading work. So yeah.